Cinema has always had the power to inspire, make us laugh, cry, and even cringe. But as times change, so do our perspectives. And some films that were once celebrated would never make it past the pitch meeting today. Whether it's outdated stereotypes, questionable humor, or themes that simply haven't aged well, these movies remind us how much the cultural landscape has shifted. In this video, we're counting down 10 movies that would absolutely be canceled if made today. From eyebrow-raising jokes to controversial depictions we didn't think twice about back then, you'll be surprised at just how far Hollywood has come and what it left behind. So grab your popcorn, settle in, and let's take a nostalgic and slightly shocking trip back in time. Number 1. Airplane, 1980. Kicking us off is Airplane, a comedy classic that defined absurdist humor in the 1980s. Its rapid-fire gags, over-the-top slapstick, and unapologetically silly jokes have made it a favorite for decades. But here's where things get tricky. Much of the humor relies on stereotypes that feel outdated and problematic by today's standards. The film objectifies flight attendants, reducing them to punchlines and playing into gender cliches. Some jokes, like the infamous coffee scene, veer into crude territory that would likely raise eyebrows with modern audiences. Then there's the jive-talking scene, where two black characters speak exaggerated slang, made worse by the subtitles that turn the moment into a parody of cultural communication, a joke that feels uncomfortable and insensitive today. While Airplane is undeniably a product of its time, its humor raises questions about how far comedy should go. Though many still view it as a comedic masterpiece, adapting a film like Airplane for today's cultural-aware audiences would require a significant rethink of its approach to humor. It remains a reminder of how much comedy and society's tolerance for certain types of jokes has evolved over the years. Number 2. 16 Candles, 1984. Directed by John Hughes, 16 Candles is a quintessential teen movie of the 1980s, captured the angst, romance, and humor of adolescence. However, while its heartfelt story about a girl whose 16th birthday is overshadowed by her sister's wedding made it a cultural touchstone, certain elements of the film haven't aged well. One of the most glaring issues is the portrayal of Long Duke Dong, a character who embodies nearly every harmful Asian stereotype. His appearances are accompanied by a literal gong sound effect, reducing him to a one-dimensional punchline. What may have been seen as harmless humor in the 1980s now comes across as offensive and demeaning. Even more troubling is the subplot involving a drunk teenage girl being offered, almost as a joke, to another character. The scene trivializes consent and perpetuates attitudes that would rightly be considered unacceptable today. At the time, moments like these were brushed off as comedic or normal, but through a modern lens, they raise serious concerns about the portrayal of gender, race, and boundaries. If 16 Candles were released today, it would undoubtedly face intense criticism, likely before the first trailer even dropped. While the film remains beloved for its nostalgic charm and relatable themes, it serves as a stark reminder of how far we've come in terms of cultural awareness, representation, and respect. What are your thoughts? Would this movie have been criticized even before the release of a trailer? Number 3. Tropic Thunder, 2008. By 2008, Tropic Thunder hit theaters as a sharp, satirical take on the absurdities of Hollywood filmmaking. Its over-the-top humor and self-aware mockery of Hollywood actors, egos, and production tropes struck a chord with many, but it also made the movie a lightning rod for controversy. At the center of the backlash was Robert Downey Jr.'s character, an Australian method actor who undergoes surgery to darken his skin in order to play a black soldier, essentially blackface. While the intent was to satirize Hollywood's tone-deaf approach to casting and method acting, many found the execution offensive, with the satire overshadowed by the uncomfortable imagery. It's a prime example of a joke where the why may be clear, but the how crosses a line. The film didn't stop there. Tropic Thunder also faced significant criticism for its portrayal of disabilities, particularly in Ben Stiller's character, who was mocked for playing a fictional role called Simple Jack. The film used outdated and offensive stereotypes about intellectual disabilities as a source of humor, which sparked outrage from disability advocates at the time, and would be even more contentious today. Ultimately, Tropic Thunder is a love it or hate it kind of film. Its bold satire may have worked for some audiences in 2008, but in today's climate, where there's far greater sensitivity to issues of race, representation, and disability, it's unlikely this movie would get greenlit, let alone avoid a firestorm of criticism. While Tropic Thunder remains a product of its time, it's also a reminder of how satire can walk a fine line between clever commentary and unintentional harm. Number 4. Revenge of the Nerds, 1984. Revenge of the Nerds is often remembered as a quintessential 1980s comedy, with a story of underdogs, nerds, finally triumphing over their more popular jock-like peers. On the surface, it's a feel-good movie about overcoming bullying and finding acceptance, but beneath that surface, Revenge of the Nerds includes elements that are deeply problematic by today's standards. Some of the film's pranks are downright disturbing, such as when the nerds secretly install hidden cameras in a sorority house to spy on women. Worse, one of the characters engages in a manipulative act by seducing a woman while pretending to be someone else. What is presented as a humorous or triumphant moment in the film is, in reality, a serious violation of consent. While the movie encourages viewers to root for the nerds, their actions, particularly in these scenes, are far from heroic. In fact, they portray toxic behavior that undermines the idea of respect and healthy relationships. In today's world, these scenes would likely overshadow the movie's central plot, attracting widespread criticism for the portrayal of manipulation, sexual consent, and objectification. What might have been seen as edgy or humorous in the 1980s now seems incredibly troubling, offering a stark reminder that what is funny to one generation can appear deeply troubling to another. Number 5. Blazing Saddles, 1974. Blazing Saddles is often hailed as one of the greatest comedies of all time, thanks to its biting satire that takes aim at racism and bigotry. Directed by Mel Brooks, the film uses humor to expose and ridicule the deep-seated prejudices of its time, offering a sharp critique of racial injustice. However, while the movie's intent is to satirize racism, it employs racial slurs and harmful stereotypes as part of its comedic arsenal. The use of these elements, while effective for a satirical purpose in the 1970s, presents a significant challenge for contemporary viewers. Today, it can be difficult to separate the film's critique of racism from the offensive language and imagery it uses to make its points. Some would argue that the film's provocative nature is a key part of its satire, using shock value to highlight societal issues, but others might feel that it crosses several lines of decency, pushing past the boundaries of acceptable humor and entering taboo territory. The question remains, in today's climate, would a movie like Blazing Saddles be accepted? Not likely. If it were made today, it would undoubtedly spark outrage and become a cultural scandal. Despite its historical significance and cultural impact, Blazing Saddles serves as a reminder of how the lines between edgy satire and harmful language can be blurred, and how much more sensitive audiences have become to issues of race and representation. Number 6. Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, 1994. Jim Carrey's performance as Ace Ventura delivered the over-the-top physical comedy he's known for, but one aspect of the film hasn't aged well. The antagonist is revealed to be a transgender woman, and the depiction leans heavily into mockery and outdated stereotypes. Ace's exaggerated reaction to discovering her gender, a moment played for laughs, may have seemed funny in 1994, but it comes across as offensive and insensitive today. The scene, which wouldn't have a place in modern comedy, highlights how far we've come in terms of understanding and representation, and reminds us how much further we still need to go. Number 7. The American Pie films, 1999 to 2012. The American Pie series was once hailed as a cornerstone of teen comedy, capturing the awkwardness of adolescence, first crushes, and coming-of-age milestones. But while its raunchy humor and over-the-top scenarios made it a hit, much of the content doesn't hold up under today's lens. One of the most glaring examples is the infamous scene where a female character is secretly filmed undressing without her knowledge or consent. A moment played for laughs at the time, but now rightfully viewed as a violation of privacy and outright unacceptable. Beyond this, the films lean heavily on themes like objectifying women, pressuring sexual encounters, and normalizing behaviors that blur the line between comedic mischief and problematic conduct. While certain gags, like that infamous pie scene, may still provoke laughter for some, much of the humor relies on outdated gender roles, toxic masculinity, and sexual exploitation, all elements that would spark backlash if the films were made today. These movies serve as a reminder of how youth culture comedies have evolved and how much our standards for representation and respect have changed for the better. Number 8. White Chicks, 2004. White Chicks is a comedy that many remember for its outrageous premise. Two black FBI agents disguise themselves as wealthy white women to go undercover. While the movie delivered laughs for audiences in 2004, it relied heavily on racial, gender, and class stereotypes to fuel its humor. The film plays with exaggerated portrayals of white women, black culture, and affluent society, leaning into tropes that, in today's world, are widely considered outdated and problematic. While some viewers still appreciate its absurd comedic moments, others see it as perpetuating harmful cliches and inviting mockery at the expense of real cultural and gender diversity. If White Chicks were released today, it would likely face significant backlash, sparking debates over whether its humor crosses the line from parody to offensive stereotyping. It's a reminder of how comedy has evolved and how modern audiences demand more thoughtful and inclusive storytelling. Number 9. Leon, the Professional, 1994. Leon, the Professional, is often celebrated as a gripping story of revenge, redemption, and an unlikely bond between a hitman and a young girl. However, the film's portrayal of the relationship between Leon and Matilda blurs lines that are deeply uncomfortable by today's standards. What begins as a mentorship sometimes veers into troubling territory, with moments that hint at inappropriate affection, particularly through Matilda's behavior and dialogue. While the film doesn't cross explicit boundaries, its depiction of a young girl infatuated with an adult man creates unease and raises questions about intention and context. Modern audiences, more attuned to issues of power dynamics and boundaries, will likely view these elements as deeply problematic, no matter how well the story is told. Leon, the Professional, remains a thought-provoking film, but it also serves as a reminder of the importance of handling sensitive relationships with care and awareness in storytelling. What do you think? Would this movie be canceled today? Number 10. Borat, 2006. And finally, there's Borat. Cultural Learnings of America for Make-Benefit Glorious Nation of Kazakhstan was a cultural phenomenon when it hit theaters in 2006. This outrageous mockumentary, led by Sacha Baron Cohen, pushed the boundaries of comedy using satire and cringeworthy moments to expose prejudice, ignorance, and hypocrisy in society. However, the film's approach, poking fun at everyone and everything, would be far more controversial today. The humor in Borat leans heavily on cultural stereotypes, with Borat's exaggerated portrayal of a Kazakh journalist often reducing his home country to offensive caricatures. The film also doesn't shy away from taboo topics like racism, sexism, homophobia, and anti-Semitism, using shocking dialogue and scenarios to highlight the absurdity of these beliefs. While Baron Cohen's intention was to critique bigotry and ignorance, the execution sometimes blurred the line between satire and offense. In today's cultural landscape, where conversations around representation, cultural sensitivity, and social justice are more prominent than ever, Borat would likely face significant backlash. Audiences might question whether the film's comedic style inadvertently reinforces the very stereotypes it aims to mock, rather than dismantling them. That said, Borat undeniably left its mark on comedy and pulp culture, sparking debates about the role of satire and the fine line between provocation and offense. But could it have the same impact in 2024? Unlikely. The film's boundary-pushing humor, which was groundbreaking then, would struggle to find the same reception in today's more critical and socially aware climates. What can we learn from these films? They aren't just relics of humor or entertainment, they're a reflection of the times in which they were made. Whether it's outdated jokes, harmful stereotypes, or portrayals of women and other groups that feel widely inappropriate today, these movies show us what society once accepted as the norm. But as viewers, we have to ask ourselves, should these movies be suppressed and forgotten, or can they serve as tools for reflection and growth? Sometimes films act as a mirror, revealing not just where we've been, but how far we've come, and reminding us of the work still left to do. So, there you have it. 10 movies that define their era, but would likely never see the light of day in today's world. What do you think? Do you agree with our list? Or do we have other films in mind that would face the same fate? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this exploration of pop culture's past, be sure to hit that like button, share the video, and subscribe to Director's Cut for more deep dives into the untold stories of Hollywood. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.